So you've got the OPPO Enco Air2 Pro and you're thinking about upgrading to the Air3 Pro. Both of these are terrific value for money, but they do have their minor differences. If you would like to see my in-depth reviews on either of these earphones, I'll leave it down in the description below. So without further ado, let's jump straight into how these are built. Both these earphones have a very similar unboxing experience, almost like they're made by the same manufacturer. You get the usual stuff in the boxes, but you start seeing the differences when it comes to their cases. For one, the OPPO brand has been moved to the front of the case where it should be on the Air3 Pro. Having their brand name on the rear never made sense to me when it came to the Air2 Pro. Both have a glossy finish with a transparent crescent design on the top, but the Air3 Pro looks a little more premium with a wave design incorporated in the upper part of the lid. Both have LED lights on the front and let you know the case's battery levels, and they come with USB-C charging. The Air3 Pro's case does seem to be a little more compact than the Air2 Pro, which is a nice welcome, and what adds a touch of class is the recessed brand logo they've used with a mirror finish. It does have a more premium look compared to the previous generation for sure. When you open the cases, the earphones are both placed in a similar way and are easy to pluck out of their cases. The Air3 Pro earphones aren't an exact replica of the Air2 Pro despite looking like it. The housings hold the drivers are slightly smaller as well as the stems. They're a little bit shorter compared to the Air2 Pros. They both have touch controls and comfortable ear tips. And speaking about comfort, because the Air3 Pro has a slightly smaller housing, I haven't had any discomfort with it over longer listening sessions, whereas I've always developed a slight discomfort which has led to a pain in my left ear with the Air2 Pro, since my left ear's concha is smaller than my right ear. So it's nice to see that OPPO has tried to make these a little smaller for people with smaller ears. Something I've really come to like over the last year of using the Air2 Pro is the little mesh they've incorporated in the ear tip, since it catches any debris so won't clog up the earphones meshing. It's easier to clean the ear tip than the earphones meshing any day. When it comes to these earphones ingress protection levels, the Air2 Pro comes with an IP54 rating, whereas the Air3 Pro comes with an IP55 rating, so they should be fine for outdoor use or for your workouts in the gym. The Air2 Pro comes with Bluetooth version 5.2, the Air3 Pro comes with Bluetooth version 5.3. They both have touch controls and you get more control over the Hey Melody app. The Air2 Pro is a little more limited, only giving you ANC controls, EQ modes, game mode and earbud controls, whereas the Air3 Pro gives you ANC controls, personalized ANC, EQ modes, high quality audio which lets you engage the LDAC codec if your transmitting device supports it. It has a golden sound option which does a hearing test to analyze the frequencies you've lost and compensates your audio by accentuating those frequencies. It has something called Alive Audio which creates more of an expansive sound while consuming your audio and works quite well. A game mode improves latency. You get dual connection controls also, which works more like simultaneous pairing. The Air2 Pro also has multi-device pairing, but it's not as flawless in operation as the Air3 Pro. You get a earbud fit test and of course the earbud controls which you can customize as well. What I have missed during this comparison is being able to switch off the in-ear detection on either device while doing some A/B testing while listening to music. It would have been nice to include this in the Hey Melody app. Latency wise for gaming, the Air2 Pro has an impressive 94 millisecond response time when it's in game mode, but the Air3 Pro has an even more impressive 47 milliseconds response time when it's in game mode. When it comes to how these handle their ANC, none of these are a slouch at all because both of them are able to suppress droning sounds pretty well, and the Air3 Pro does do it slightly better than the Air2 for sure. But the strange thing about this earphone in particular is that OPPO has been very secretive about how many microphones it uses. So it makes me wonder exactly how many microphones are on these, because when you look at the Enco Air2 Pro very closely, you can see a small cutout at the lower section of the stem, and there is also one cutout a little higher up on the stem nearer the rear part of it. When I looked for the same thing on the Air3 Pro, you couldn't see it. So it makes me wonder if it's only got one microphone at the stem, which is unlikely because it does need more data points to be able to do the active noise cancelling that much better. But then again, they have said that they're using some sort of artificial intelligence. So perhaps that AI is just that good. So where this can be a cause for concern is how it will handle its environmental noise cancelling, because these mics usually contribute towards giving in that much more data to the AI, so it can suppress all the noises around you, so it can carry a voice that much better. But instead of rambling on about what I think it will do, if you want to find out how your voice will carry over in a phone call in a crowded situation, there's only one way to find out.
I'm
calling you from the usual busy street I do all of my call tests from, just to give you a sense of the amount of noise that these earphones are going to be battling with. There is a lot of traffic going on, two-wheelers, four-wheelers. You might get the occasional pressure horn from a tanker or a truck going past, and there is some construction work going on over my left shoulder as well. So these earphones are going to be dealing with a lot when it comes to the environment, noise cancelling. So I have been on the camera microphone all this time, and I will switch over to the OPPO Enco Air2 Pro right about now. So as far as I know, these set of microphones do have two microphones per earbud. In fact, you can see it at the bottom and on the top section of the earphone. So in the past, it has performed reasonably well, especially when it comes to other earphones in its price range. So this is pretty much what the OPPO Enco Air2 Pro will do when it comes to carrying your voice over to your recipient. Keep in mind, this is the very worst kind of situation you can be in if you're walking or running in a park or on a main road. So what I'll do right now is I'll switch over to the Enco Air3 Pro right about now. So this earphone doesn't seem to have a second mic on the upper section like the OPPO Enco Air3 Pro does. So it really does make me wonder how many microphones it has, because OPPO has been fairly secretive about letting out this information. But this is your demo to see whether or not its artificial intelligence does as well or better or worse than the OPPO Enco Air2 Pro. So, of course, this is the ideal situation to test these in, especially because there's so much going on behind me. And I do hope that these demos have given you a better understanding about both these earphones, so you can decide which one is right for you. And, of course, I will see you back at the studio. Both of these come with 12.4mm dynamic drivers and support the SPC and AAC codecs. The Air3 Pro can support the LDAC codec if your transmitting device supports it as well. The frequency response on the Air2 Pro is from 20Hz all the way up to 20,000Hz, and the response from the Air3 Pro is 20Hz all the way up to 40,000Hz. On a volume front, straight out of the box, both these earphones seem like they don't amp very well, but there is a quick fix for this. If you put both of them on the bass boost mode, it does tend to sound a little more alive. And speaking about something sounding alive, the OPPO Enco Air3 Pro has something called Alive Audio. So when you switch that on, it does give it a bit more of a boost in the audio, as well as expanding the soundstage. Without the bass boost and the Alive Audio on, I find both of them to sound comfortable at around 50 or 55% volume. When the bass boost is on both of them and the Alive Audio is on the Air3 Pro, I don't find the need to go beyond about 40 or 45% with the Air3. And when this is on, it is definitely a bit louder than the Air2 Pro for sure. I wouldn't recommend listening to any of these earphones beyond 60% volume, because it can get quite loud there, and if you intend on preserving your hearing, I wouldn't go beyond that mark. And if you are planning on listening to these at lower volumes, the Air2 Pro can thin out significantly below 30% volume. But the Air3 Pro, on the other hand, it does maintain a sense of roundedness even down low at 25%. When it comes to their soundstage, both of these are very similar with the dead center phantom channel, and you get good left and right separation between the earphones, but it does exist between your ears like most other TWS earphones. There is this bubble you're listening to, but the Air3 Pro benefits with the OPPO Alive Audio. Once it's switched on, it tends to expand your audio, your overall soundstage ever so slightly. So you do get the illusion of more tones coming from a little out of the earphones than with the Air2 Pro. It does contribute towards listening to your audio in a more expansive way, and it is certainly a lot more immersive when it comes to your audio listening experience compared to the Air2 Pro. When it comes to the imaging, the Air3 Pro is a little bit sharper than the Air2 Pro. Now, it's not so significant because the Air2 Pro is a good performer, but the Air3 does have a slightly better edge over its detail. The biggest advantage it has is when you switch over to the LDAC codec, because if you're feeding it a much higher res audio, it can carry that much data over to you. Now, when it comes to the high res audio, in no way can it compare to a good set of IEMs, even in the budget segment, which goes for a much more affordable rate than these earphones do. But it's nice to see that they're trying to expand into the high-res audio world. You're still capped at 990 kbps, but whenever you do switch over from AAC to the LDAC codec, you can tell that you do get a finer structure in your overall imaging with the Air 3 Pro. Where this can be a negative is the fact that once the LDAC codec is on and you're transferring that much more data across to these earphones, your battery consumption is bound to get hit, because I think I had witnessed maybe 40 or 50% loss within about 45 minutes of listening, because I had the simultaneous pairing working at the same time. So LDAC will certainly eat into your battery life. But again, between the Air 2 Pro and the Air 3 Pro, there is a slight difference when you're listening to it in AAC. Only if you're certainly going to be listening to LDAC all of the time, there is a significant jump. If you're going to be listening to AAC most of the time, there is a very minor difference between the two. High frequencies are well detailed between both these earphones, but there are slight differences. The Air 2 Pro has a slightly laid back, mellow approach towards this range without lacking in energy and detail here, whereas the Air 3 Pro is delivered to you with a little more purpose. It is slightly more forward with the Air 3 Pro, making me feel that it might be a little too much for someone who is sensitive to higher frequencies, but it's not piercing or fatiguing really. Listening to vertical horizons, everything you want, the shimmer of the cymbal can seem distant or a little lost with the Air 2 Pro, whereas with the Air 3 Pro, this track does perk up slightly, making it a little more immersive and enjoyable, since it does showcase more detail and excitement in this range. Mid frequencies are slightly pulled back on both these earphones, but they're not pulled back so much where you lose much detail. This range sounds a little more nasal with the Air 3 Pro than the Air 2 Pro. The Air 2 Pro plays this range back with a slightly more natural approach than the Air 3 Pro. It's more rounded as compared to the Air 3 Pro, which can seem to sound a little on the sibilant side in comparison. This could be due to having a slightly flatter tuning in the mid-range compared to the Air 3 Pro. But because of how the Air 3 Pro has been tuned, it does sound a little bit richer than the Air 2 Pro in this range. Listening to John Mayer's New Light, there's good separation between instruments and vocals here, more so on the Air 3 Pro than the Air 2 Pro. I wouldn't say one is better or worse than the other here. I'd say they have their own flavors of delivering this range to you when it comes to vocals and instruments. Both are enjoyable, with the Air 3 Pro sounding a little better detailed, but with a slight reduction in the lower mid-range as compared to the Air 2 Pro. Lower frequencies are handled almost as if these are the exact same earphones to a certain extent. They both have good sub-bass extension, with the Air 3 Pro tending to be a little more prominent here, but only slightly. It's almost as if the Air 3 Pro is quite literally an evolution in this region, with slightly tighter bass, slightly punchier delivery and slightly better structure, but only slightly. Listening to Ariana Grande's Positions, the sub-bass region in this track does go quite low down, which can make you expect a set of earphones to fizzle out in this region, but both these handle this range quite respectably. But if you want a little more detail and fullness in this range, the Air 3 Pro does have very slightly more excitement in this range compared to the Air 2 Pro, with the Air 2 Pro still holding its ground quite well here. When it comes to being able to tweak the sound with these, they have EQ modes now. Both of these have EQ modes on the Hey Melody app, and both have 3 different modes. I have kept these on the bass boost mode because it sounds a lot more natural than the other EQs in particular, and the bass isn't boosted so much that it intrudes in the mid-range very much. So it's the most fun EQ preset to listen to. And the Air 3 Pro also has the live audio that I mentioned. It does give you a much wider expanse in soundstage. It is more immersive. I found myself not liking the iterations of Dolby Atmos with a lot of earphones, so I tend to avoid using it, whereas what OPPO's done with the Alive Audio is it's got a lot more natural presence. It's more natural in its tuning. It's not too exaggerated in certain frequencies, so it can be a lot more fun to listen to. And of course, you do get the golden sound, which I mentioned. You'll have to take your time to do the hearing test so that it can analyze what frequencies that you are lacking in, so it boosts those accordingly. Now, it can be, I suppose for some people, it can be a little more enjoyable, but I didn't really like this too much. In fact, when it comes to testing your hearing, I highly recommend seeing a good ENT specialist and an audiologist to know exactly how your ear health is. So to sum up, both of these are built terrifically well. I've had the OPPO Enco Air2 Pro for well over a year now, and it's still doing very well. All the OPPO earphones that I've ever reviewed over the past many years of having this channel, I've not really had an OPPO device fail on me when it comes to its build. It's more the battery that packs up over time, usually well over 2.5 years. These are built pretty well. The only gripe I really have with OPPO is they're always pushing out glossy finished cases, and I prefer the matte finish route because it just ages more gracefully. Glossy finished cases usually end up looking a year old after just maybe 2 or 3 months of use, depending on how you've used it, unless of course you plan on using some sort of skin or case with it. On an overall build front, this is built pretty robust. I have dropped the Air 2 Pro in the past a few times. It's never really broken, it's never really come apart. So I do know that Oppo's build quality is quite good. On a feature front, I can't really complain about either of them. The Air 2 Pro offers a certain amount of features in its price range, which I think is more than adequate. Both of them have touch controls that are very responsive. I've never really had an issue with them. I personally do like tactile controls, but I think it's sort of been phased out lately. A lot of people are just using touch controls. The Hey Melody app does offer a lot of features, more so with the Air 3 Pro in particular, but it's got what it needs for the Air 2 Pro. The multi-device pairing is something I never liked with the Air 2 Pro because you had to press and hold one of the earbuds after programming it to switch over to a secondary device. And for the first few months while I was testing it, it never did that. So I thought there was something wrong with my set despite doing resets and firmware updates. But it turns out it never shifted over to the secondary device. If I had something playing on the primary device, it refused to shift over. So it took me a while before I realized I have to pause my video or audio on the primary device. Only then would it shift over to the secondary device. So it was a bit fiddly, which was annoying. The Air 3 Pro, on the other hand, it does connect to two devices at the same time. So if you're listening to something on your computer or an iPad and you're connected to yours, let's say in my situation, I was connected to my iPad and my phone, and I was absorbing content from my iPad, and my phone rang, it immediately switched over to the phone call because it assumed that the phone call is obviously more important than the media that I'm consuming. So I think it works pretty well, it works pretty flawlessly, and I've not really had any gripes with it. If you are someone who's working from office or from home and you need something that can do a quick switch over, I'd say you're better off with the Air 3 Pro because there's no fuss. You don't have to worry about doing anything. The device already is latched on. You don't have to press and hold anything and hope that you'll catch a call instead of missing it. On a battery front, these have very similar numbers, but I think the biggest difference you'll find between the two is when you use the LDAC codec with the Air 3 Pro, because like I did mention, at one point in time when I was testing the Air 3 Pro for my in-depth review, I was listening to the LDAC codec with high bitrate transmission with high-res audio. I was simultaneously paired to a secondary device, and I was also listening not at a very loud volume. I was listening at maybe 35 or 40% volume at the time. And within 45 minutes, I had only about 40% battery or about 50% battery left. So it depleted that battery very quickly. So the LDAC codec is bound to eat into a lot of battery. So if you are somebody who wants to listen to LDAC and high res and you're planning on using it for a commute, it should carry you at least for, I'd say, an hour and 20, an hour and a half. If you only listen to the LDAC codec at a lower volume. This is including with the ANC on. If you have the ANC off, you can stretch it a bit more. Largely, they both will carry you for the same amount of time, and it will vary depending on what volume you're listening to your music in. So on a sound front, both of these are very similarly matched. I'd say they're kind of diminishing returns if you're looking at the Air 3 Pro. If you have a budget for the Air 2 and you're thinking about the Air 3 and sound is your preference, yes, the Air 3 is a bit richer in detail. It can be a little more on the sibilant side. I think people who have sensitive ears towards higher frequencies may feel that it's a little too piercing for them. The Air 2 Pro, on the other hand, I really like the way it does mids. It's a lot more mellow, it's a lot more rounded. It's not that it's not an enjoyable set of earphones to listen to, it's still a very good set of earphones, because I've recently done a few comparisons between, I think, the Realme Buds Air 3, JBL Wavebeam and JBL Wave Buds, and I found myself still preferring the OPPO Enco Air 2 Pro. They've done a terrific job with how they've tuned it. Where the biggest advantage comes with the Air 3 Pro is when you're using the LDAC codec, because your imaging gets a little sharper, your overall detail recovery gets a little crisper. So if you want to get into the whole thing about I want to listen to more detail in my music, the Air 3 Pro makes more sense over the Air 2 Pro for sure. But if you really want to get into high-res audio, I'd strongly recommend you check out some of the videos I've made about IEMs if you want to get into the audiophile world, because you can get a really good setup for half the price of the Enco Air 3 Pro. So honestly, I'd say the Air 2 Pro is a little more value for money. Sure, you don't get the LDAC and the simultaneous pairing, but it does pretty much what it has to do, and it does it well. You might be a little low on the detail recovery when it comes to the Air 2 Pro, but it's still a very enjoyable set of earphones to listen to. So when it comes to the pricing, how much do these cost? Well, at the time of recording this video, the Air 2 Pro has an MRP of 4,999, but it's being sold for 3,499. And the Air 3 Pro has an MRP of 7,999, but it's being sold for 4,999. So these do have fairly interesting prices that they're being sold at, and I've not really seen Oppo fluctuating their prices much over time, or at least for a year, until a newer model comes out. And another thing is, I'm not quite sure if the Air 2 Pro is being discontinued, because I think it's a very valid set of earphones to still exist in the market, because it's still super value for money compared to a lot of other earphones that exist in that price range. Like I said, I have done comparisons with it against other earphones, and some of those earphones don't even have active noise cancelling. So I am hoping that Oppo is not discontinuing them. But over the last few days, I have been going to the Oppo site just to check this out, and a few times it has said out of stock. So I'm hoping that the stock is going to be replenished. But I do hope that this video is giving you a little more clarity if you're planning on upgrading from your Air 2 Pros, or even if you're planning on buying the Air 2 Pro or Air 3 Pro during any of those sales, because there are a few sales coming up, and these are both very interesting sets to own. It's just a matter of what your preferences are. So I hope you found this video helpful and informative, and I do hope that I've helped you make some sort of purchase decision. If you would like to support the channel, I'm sure you know exactly how to. But of course, thank you for tuning into Paul's POV for some sound advice. IP54 rating, whereas the Air 3 Pro comes with an IP55 rating. So they should be fine for outdoor use or for your workouts in the gym.